We are live.
The broadcast is live.
The
Okay.
broadcast is live. So my tech people are going to check if we're live on our YouTube link and on our Facebook. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Rabbi Aaron Rechav Chabad of the Nayaks, and here with me is Dr. Yisroel Susskind, otherwise known as Dr. Ed Yisroel Susskind. Dr. Susskind received his PhD in clinical psychology at Yale University over 50 years ago. He spent the next 15 years as a full-time therapist, as a faculty member at the university, followed by 35 years as a full-time therapist, as an author, lectures around the world. He lives in Muncie, New York, where he works as an individual and marital therapist. He also treats clients internationally using both telephone and internet video. He's a frequent speaker at Chabad events and a personal friend of mine and our families. Welcome, Dr. Susskind.
Sounds really wonderful. I'd like to meet this guy.
I'd like to meet him too. So we're all honored, and great to have you with us. It's no secret that we're living in unprecedented times. Most of us know, many of us know of somebody that passed away. Most of us know someone who's not well. We're all affected. Every one of us is affected here in New York, especially around the country, around the world. We're staying at home. Many people are out of work, reduced incomes, no work, or unemployed, underemployed. Children are home from school. For Pesach, we had seders on our own, didn't get together with family. Many of us are cooped up in apartments in the city. We're lucky to be here, blessed to be here in the suburbs where there's larger homes and some space to go out without meeting too many people in the suburbs. Get some fresh air. And the reality is that the anxiety levels and stress levels can go up there, especially the whole family is home. If it's more people, affects. So the questions are out there. How do we lessen or cope or deal with the heightened anxiety levels, heightened stress levels, especially in ourselves, with our family in particular, in general, our spouses, and our children. There are children growing up now, young children who are living through this. These are unprecedented times in our history, modern history. And so with that, Dr. Susskind, I turn the floor to you.
Okay. To keep us focused, I want to point out there are two basic principles here. Any question that I address, Rabbi Aaron Reich is going to go back to these two principles. One principle is that a crisis is a magnifying glass. All kinds of things in our lives, things we should have handled and didn't handle, all of a sudden become much more visible, and they demand our attention. Opportunities that we wished we had taken, that we could take, are clearer, and we have an opportunity to take them and some pressure to take them. The crisis is a magnifying glass. The question is, what do you do with this increased perception that you have? The second principle is a principle that comes out of Torah. Torah says there are two things you need to do. Avoid the bad. In Torah language, we say sur meira, and do good. In fact, I shouldn't say do good. It says create good. It says aseh tov, and you're smiling because you know that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he looked at that word that could be taken simply mean to do, he said, no. It means create. The crisis is an opportunity for us to learn, not to get drawn into negativity, to move away from it, and to actively create good. If you are doing those things, if you're using the crisis, let me give you an example, because these are all very fancy, highfalutin kind of words.
Let's bring it down.
Let's bring it on down, okay? Now, I have a client who I was talking to. He's working. He's not working as much as he usually does. He's managing to get by, got financial pressures, but he's managing to get by. He does work some. And he's home and he's bored out of his mind. And he finds that he's getting grumpy and he's being grumpy with some of the people around him. So I said to him, tell me, what are the things in your life that you really love? Now it ends up, he loves the clarinet. This is a guy from a Hasidic background. He's not a performing musician, but when he takes a clarinet and he plays a Hasidic niggin, he's in heaven. And I said, it doesn't surprise me because we're told that your breath brings out your neshama. Okay? He's not banging a drum. And I said to him, I want to know if you will agree. And he usually doesn't have time for his clarinet. I want to agree you're going to spend half an hour a day playing clarinet. Okay? You're not going to ignore it as, well, it's not important enough for me to make time for. I've got other things to do. Very often when we're in our regular schedule can tie us up so much. We're not spending as much time talking to family who we love. We're not pursuing hobbies and interests. The Rebbe had the Lubavitcher Rebbe had the word tarud. Tarud meant downtrodden. You're schlepping such a load that it eats up your energy and you're taking your eyes away from the big picture, from the things that are really important. So this time of stress, and particularly with the fact that we're stuck at home, gives us an opportunity to take a look at, did I do something today that was thrilling for me? Now, if I just sat around and ate pastrami sandwiches.
For some people, that's thrilling.
Well, I know, but it's a numbing drug. It's a passive numbing drug. So people find they're drinking more, they're eating more, they're smoking more. They're sitting and numbing out, watching movies all day. Okay? There's nothing wrong with that stuff in small quantities, but it's passive. And if you want to get through this crisis well, one of the things to do is to look at, what do I feel passionate about, and to spend time doing it. So that's me for a starter. The clarinet solution to COVID-19. Do you want me to continue rolling, or would you like to guide me with some questions?
We're good. So find something you love doing. Find something you enjoy doing, to wake up something within you to get some excitement rolling, to get some positivity rolling, something that you enjoy, put you in a better frame of mind. Okay, that's a good beginning. That's a good start.
You know, I started drinking elderberry juice.
I started drinking fine scotch.
Okay. You know what? I like your prescription better than one of my friends. I have a friend who's a homeopath, who's also very into naturalistic healing. And she said, if you want to stimulate your immune system, people are saying you need to take more vitamin C than you normally do. She said, get elderberry juice. It took me a while. There was a run on elderberry juice. The fact is, we know there are nutrients that we put into our system that make us more robust. Torah says that vitamin S is the most important nutrient. You know what vitamin S is, yes? Or am I putting you on the spot?
You're putting me on the spot.
Simcha. Joy. Okay? If you are doing things that make you feel joyful. Now, a lot of times people, they don't have the time for it. They've got all these other things to do. And I don't normally have the time to go hunting for elderberry juice. And I don't normally have the time to swallow 3 or 6 grams of vitamin C a day. But I understand these are exceptional times, and it's pushing me to do things that I should have been doing anyway. So if you're stuck, if the magnifying glass has revealed there isn't enough joy in your life, you're fulfilling your responsibilities, you're doing the things you're supposed to. There are some nice things in your life. They're nice, but nice is not simcha. And if the magnify, and if when I say to you, every day do something that brings joy into your life, you say, I don't know what he's talking about.
It resonates. What you're saying resonates. One thing that we as human beings, most of us, not everybody, extroverts more than introverts, we need human interaction, and we're having less of that, especially people living home alone or with just your spouse. How many weeks can you do it? Just with your spouse. I'm finding that making phone calls with the video on, with whatever app, people are appreciating that because that brings them most people enjoy a good conversation, face-to-face good conversation. So I'm finding that I started conversations with text, phone. I'm trying to go more to the face-to-face conversations, which I think brings out it's some of that joy that you're speaking of.
Absolutely.
That it brings out in people.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Although I need to warn you, there's a new Yiddish word. I don't know how many of our listeners know any Yiddish. I learned it day before yesterday. Ausgezumt.
Ausgezumt, like ausgemuttert. Ausgezumt. I've had enough of Zoom.
Yeah, okay, so zoomed out.
Zoomed out. Right. Got it. Let me. We did get.
You moved away from the microphone.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm back here. We got some. Someone's telling me we're not on Facebook. Someone's telling us. Can you please respond to this? Respond to that on my text. So, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
Some people sent in some questions earlier, and perhaps there'll be some more questions that'll come in now. One question that came in. We're all. I'll tell you about myself. I've been wearing gloves and a mask from the beginning. Whenever I went out to the grocery, I had to go to the post office or to the bank, the few times we went out, gloves and a mask. I haven't seen gloves talked about on the news like as a must, mask. And so I said, you know what? I'm getting carried away with these gloves. The gloves are in the car. When I take them off backwards, who knows what I'm bringing with the gloves back into me? The gloves don't get washed as quickly as my hands do. So somebody asked, what is it with being hypervigilant? What's the impact of hypervigilance for an extended period of time on one's health? And what steps can we take to mitigate this? And is physical fatigue a result of hypervigilance? And I can relate to the question because I was being like hyper. In the beginning, we washed down every banana that came into the house. We sort of let go. It was driving us crazy. We let go. We got to do what makes sense. So we're washing our hands, wearing a mask, leaving shoes and coats at the door. But the bananas we haven't been washing. In the beginning, we did. Where is the balance? And is there a long-term effect on one's health?
So the simple answer to the question is yes, there is a long-term effect. Long-term hypervigilance is damaging to the body. Walking around with a strong sense of danger, I have to be on guard. Any mistake could be fatal. Leads to the release of hormones, adrenaline, cortisol in the body. On the one hand, if you're really in danger, that's a wonderful thing to do. There are sources of sugar in your body that are stored in the liver that you normally have no voluntary access to. The only time they're released by the liver is when you're terrified. If your body is experiencing terror and we need to get moving, we need to protect ourselves, hormones get released, the liver will release them. But it's draining on the body. Let me draw a metaphor. I think in metaphors. There was a point during the Israeli-Arab and particularly Israeli-Egyptian conflict when the Israelis decided they had to go to war. Why? Because the Egyptians would start to make noises in the Sinai and the Israelis would mobilize. And then the Egyptians would quiet down. And then the same would happen and the cycle would go on. And every time the country mobilized, it was a tremendous drain on the economy. And they decided we can't continue doing this. So they went to war. Now, let me go back from the metaphor to your question about hypervigilance. You can be super vigilant for short periods of time. When does it become hypervigilant? When you look at the cost benefit and you're saying, how effortful, what is it costing me to engage in this mindset and in this behavior? And past a certain point, it's not worth it. Maybe it's not worth worrying about the bananas. If it's leaving you stressed at the end, as opposed to thrilled with yourself. Hey, you know what I did today? I went to my breakfast, I got every banana, I'm thrilled, I'm pumped, I'm having a good time. I'm in the army with the other soldiers, we're marching down the road, we're singing. But when you start to feel it's draining you, I'll go back to vitamin S, that it's killing your simcha because it's a dark cloud over your head, and you're thinking about it all the time, you need to put it in God's hands. God will decide what happens with the bananas. You can't try to control everything.
A balance is necessary. There's a balance necessary between what's vigilant and what's hypervigilant. If I have an elderly person, someone that has a really compromised immune system, I want to take stronger vigilance. If I'm a healthy individual going about my business, temperate, be real.
Even with the situation of the elderly person, you've got to weigh what's the cost on you, because there are an infinity of things that you could do. It's interesting that the rabbis this Passover, in some communities, certain rabbis in my community said, women are allowed to prepare for Passover only one day. There are a lot of women who start preparing for Passover in October. Right. All the cleaning and the and the rabbi said, one day is all you're permitted. Because with all the other stresses going on, they were not willing to have women pouring out their energy around something that we normally consider incredibly important. So for each person, it's different. And the question simply is, when you start to feel it's taken a heavy toll on you, you can do that for 3 days. If you're a soldier in the army, you can stay up for 3 days. They train you to do that. You can't do more than that.
Right.
By the way, Rabbi Ehrenreich, I don't know if you're pixelating a little bit. I don't know why that is. My picture of me on my screen is much better than my picture of you. I don't know if
it's you. Maybe it's you.
Well, but
I think I don't know what it is.
But if you don't see it, then maybe we're fine. Maybe
I look fine. I can ask our tech advisor. How am I looking over there? Not very good. She says I'm not looking great, but it is what it is. It's okay.
Okay, we'll live with it.
We'll live with it. It's okay. We'll go to another question somebody asked, and this is regarding children. Children are growing up in a weird time now. Children that are, whether they're 8 or 6, 8, 10, 12, younger than 5 or 6, they don't know what's going on. Really, that's weird. It's crazy. 6, 8, 10, 12. Yes, you can try to limit how much you speak in front of them, but they're home for 52 days now. I think we're home. They haven't been to school. They're on Zoom if they're lucky. In the public, I was actually very impressed with our yeshiva, of our children's yeshivas on Zoom since the day they were out. They were full day classes on Zoom. Our fourth grader, seventh grader, 11th grader, our college daughter in seminary, whereas a lot of the public school districts have much less, especially locally, NIAC, and it has less on with the teacher. And there's a lot of stress there for the children, and they're sensing anxiety. What can a parent do for children to lessen their anxiety level?
So there's another answer, another place where Torah, or traditional wisdom from Torah, and modern psychology match beautifully. There's a whole body of research on happiness. If you go to YouTube, there are a lot of studies on happiness. They tend to agree. Okay?
Okay.
One of the key elements.
Just 1 second. You know why they agree? If it was two Jews, they wouldn't agree. But since it's Torah and secular psychology, they agree.
Okay. In fact, there is a psychologist, Tal Ben Shachar, originally Israeli, was at Harvard, wrote a book. I don't remember the name of the book, on happiness.
Okay.
Or actually, it may be a series of lectures. He was an incredibly popular lecturer. He had 600 students in his class. He said, one of the key, most central ingredients of happiness is what some people call an attitude of gratitude. And Torah tells us the same thing. Why does Torah command us to praise God in a blessing 100 times a day? If you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you have said 100 blessings of thanks to God. Now, is God so insecure that he needs all these blessings? We could do a GoFundMe and pay for the best therapist in the world to work with it. The fact is, God doesn't need it. We need it. To the extent that when you say a prayer of thanks to God, you mean it. You feel grateful. You feel rich. You feel fortunate. And other things get put in their place. I'll give you an indelicate example. About 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I was in the hospital in Jerusalem. I was not in good shape. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. And I was on heavy-duty painkillers, and the nurses warned me I could end up constipated. And I said, I don't care. Do whatever you need to do to stop the pain. Well, I did end up caring because it happened to me. And until it's happened to you, you have no idea how painful it is. Now, there's a prayer, the first prayer that every Jew says in the morning is thanking God that the plumbing works, right? Asher Yotzar.
Right? Asher Yotzar.
First prayer of the day. Now,
Nekavim.
a lot of people, maybe you went to someone who doesn't practice Orthodoxy, and they said, well, what are your prayers like? And you said, like, what's your first prayer of the day? Do you thank God for the sun? No, I thank God that my plumbing works. What kind of religion is this? The fact is, if you've ever been in a situation where that plumbing works, and I'm telling you personally, most people I know, when they say that prayer in the morning, they mumble through it without much intentionality. When you've been through something like that, you say, you know what? Okay, I'm home. I'm on a limited budget. There are things that I can't pay for. Okay. I used to eat meat every day. I can't afford meat every day. I'm eating meat only on the Sabbath or only once a month, whatever it is. But you know what? The important stuff works. It's an attitude of gratitude. Now, I suggest to people as a stress controlling technique, because we wired into us is a struggle. And secular psychologists and atheistic psychologists like Sigmund Freud, Shlomo Zalman ben Yaakov,
that his name? Shlomo
That's his
Zalman?
name. That's his. He didn't get called that a lot. Not after his bar mitzvah, but said we have a destructive force wired inside ourselves. He started out thinking people just want pleasure. We're little pigs. And toward the end of his life, one of the last books he wrote, he said, we have a self-destructive part wired into us. And Torah says the same thing. You know, we just call it Yetzer Hara. The happiness psychologists talk about habituation. Whatever it is you got, you get used to it. The flavor's out of the chewing gum. Okay, so I doubled my salary now from what I had 5 years ago. But what have you done for me lately? We habituate. We want novelty. So one thing, I have an exercise that I suggest to everyone who's listening, including you, unless you already do it. Set your morning alarm so that before you get out of bed, you know, you can wake up, you can say your Modeh Ani. If you need to go do your first morning prayer blessing, that's okay too. You lay down in bed for 5 minutes and you think about the things in your life that are most precious to you. Maybe you think about your wife. Maybe you think about your kids. Maybe you think about your work and that you feel you make a difference to people around you. Maybe you think about the fact that people love you because of the work that you do. Maybe there's a book that you're writing. Maybe you're mastering clarinet and learning how to read notes for the first time. You spend 5 minutes thinking about what's wonderful in your life. And at night, before you go to sleep, whatever else you do, whatever literature you read before you go to sleep, you give yourself 5 minutes to do the same exercise. Now, let me go back to the question of children, which is where this all started for me.
Right.
A crisis is a wonderful opportunity to teach children. There are all kinds of things we teach children that are just words. Being grateful, trusting in God, believing it's all God's plan. They're all words until you face a crisis. And when you meet someone who faced a crisis, you talk to someone who went through the Holocaust. You talk to someone who went through a really frightening, God forbid, shouldn't happen to us, illness, either that they had or someone they love had. That's where you get to see whether these words mean anything. So for your kids to see, look, we are very, very fortunate. Life comes with challenges, but we are rich. We are blessed. We have, with the virus, with the fact that someone we love died, okay? We had that wonderful person in our lives. Some people never did. And we have many other people we love. We are rich. And yes, we can cry over the person who died. That person was special to us, important to us. But we are incredibly fortunate.
So I like the way you spoke about first doing it yourself and then telling your children or training your children and teaching your children. You know, if you practically preach, it'll be that much more meaningful and go straight through when their children hear it.
Let me say something about teaching. You can teach with a lecture. That's the least effective way to teach.
Effective. But that's where I was going.
Let's say you're sitting around the table, you and your wife and your kids, and you're saying to your wife, I don't believe how fortunate I am There are people who, because of the virus, can't do their work. And I, because of the kinds of work that I do, you're not in the NFL and you're not an usher in an NFL stadium. Because of the kind of work that I do, I'm able to reach people. And in fact, some people who don't take the time to come to my Chabad house, since they're home and there's no football to watch.
There's no football. Watch Rabbi Ehrenreich with Dr. Susskind, right?
Right. Now, if you are saying this to your wife, you're not telling your kids this is a lesson. They're hearing it. They're seeing it live.
Right. Well said. Very well said. Let's go to another question. What are the most important? This is actually the person just asked a different question, but you answered it. What are the most important things that parents of toddlers can do for their children's short and long-term emotional well-being? You just said exactly that. Teaching them to be grateful for what they have. Yes, there are issues. They're 2 years old, but even 2-year-olds can learn, or however old they are, we can
be happy, be grateful, be brave, have faith. There's
very
a plan.
Well said.
We don't necessarily know the plan. There's a plan. It's all going to work out because there's a plan.
A friend of mine uses a different Hebrew slogan, Gam ze ya'avor,
okay,
which means this too shall pass. Let's just make sure. I've been telling myself recently, I want to look back a year from now, or 2, whatever it is, whether it's 3 months, a year, or 6 years, whatever it is, this is behind us, and it will be behind us. I want to be able to look back at that time and say, I did the right thing. I responded in the right way. And so that mirrors somewhat what you said.
I want to add to what you said.
Mm-hmm.
If I say that you and your family grew through the experience, then it's not just Gamze Ya'avor, not just this will pass. Gamzu Litova. We don't necessarily see it right now. But if a year from now you are lecturing over the internet worldwide because Out found you.
Right.
Okay.
Gamzu Litova meaning this is also for the good. This is also better.
Good. It's not just something that we need to bear. If you, I'm told, I'm not an orthopedist, that if you break a bone and you reset the bone, it grows back stronger than when you originally broke it. That your body's response, your body says, oh, look, we have a problem here. And however much calcium or whatever it puts, the bone ends up stronger after the break.
Right. I heard a beautiful line. It's attributed to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I don't know if he said it verbatim, but it certainly reflects his attitude. What some people consider a problem and others can see as a challenge, I look at as an opportunity.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's a positive way of looking at it.
Now, we don't always see it. We don't always feel the price is worth it. I know when the Rebbe was asked about the Holocaust, he didn't give that answer because there are times when things happen that blow our circuitry, that are not assimilatable, that we can't take in. The Rebbe said, don't ask me to explain the Holocaust. There are things that so overload our systems that even if in the long run they are for the good, maybe there couldn't have been a state of Israel if there hadn't been a Holocaust. God knows. But that, it's like Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, said there was only one commandment that he didn't understand.
Right.
And he had to be there because he had to know, as smart as you are, King Solomon, there's certain stuff I withhold from you. Don't think you know it all. So there are certain terrible things that happen that we don't understand. But 99.999%, we can say We will bear this, we will come through this, and we will take some benefit from this.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you. Here's a question which you may have already answered. It's interesting. Someone writes that they have sleepless nights, tossing and turning, not thinking about anything negative per se. They just can't get into deep sleep. I go to sleep at 11:30, and by 12:15, I'm up again.
So I have a simple answer.
Just 1 second. Our tech advisor has it. Okay, we're good. We're good. I see 5 bars here. I think we have good connection.
Okay. 2 answers.
Okay.
A simple one and a more complicated one. The simple one is to train your mind to go into positivity. That when you're lying in bed, you do not need to fall asleep. What you need to do is, while you are lying in bed, to bring into mind positive thoughts and to build a package of positive thoughts. It's something that you practice that becomes like muscle memory, so that it's an automatic response. Negativity starts to come in, you have practiced, you know what your resources are that make you feel positive. There's a wonderful book by Tom Bunn, B-U-N-N, Panic No More. If you look up Tom Bunn and panic, he has a procedure that's based on something that's called polyvagal theory. Your vagus nerve controls a lot of emotional stuff in your body. That's why he calls it that's why they call the theory for using your nervous system to automatically switch you to a positive state rather than allowing you to stay in a negative state. So I'm not going to give you the whole book here. But the simple answer is you spend time, you immerse yourself in positive thoughts. I'll give you one wonderful example that Tom Bunn gives. He was a pilot, and he was dealing with people who were afraid of flying. And he found that he tried different techniques. Some worked with some people, some worked with others. Nothing worked with everybody. He was talking to women who had been mothers and who had nursed their babies. He said, I want you to meditate and go back into a time when you were nursing your infant. Now, if you do that, if a woman does that, it releases oxytocin in her body. Oxytocin neutralizes hormones associated with anxiety. He said with every one of these women, he was able to get them to fly without fear. This is a way, an example of where you can use your mind to bring in positive thoughts, have that become muscle memory. In the beginning, it's work. So that's the simple answer. The complicated answer is I go back to the magnifying glass. We all have unfinished business in the back of our head, in our unconscious. Negative things that happened to us that truly did frighten us. You know, it seems like, you're tossing and turning in bed and these anxiety feelings are coming from nowhere. They're not coming from nowhere. They're coming from something in your unconscious. So the one way to deal with that, and it usually means being with a therapist,
Finding out what that is
to unearth that. Now, sometimes if you're willing to deal with the pain alone and just go into whatever negative thoughts you can and squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, the stuff will pop up. For most people, if the first thing that I suggested doesn't work, they need to spend some time, 5 hours, with a therapist, trying to figure out what is the magnifying glass trying to bring up.
What's back there?
What's back there? You've got stuff that when you were a kid happened to you that you were overwhelmed by and you never wanted to look at, never wanted to deal with. But you're a grown-up now. You have the strength to go back there and clean that up.
Yeah. One thing, the first method you mentioned told me that's exactly Chabad. Chabad stands for Chochmah Bina Das, which is wisdom, knowledge, understanding. To use your intellect to control your emotions. Moach shalat al halev, that the mind should govern the heart. And so that's another place where modern psychology and Torah go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
Right.
Moach shalit al halev. Your mind, your thoughts. Shalit means dominate.
Naturally. Chabad Tanya tells us that the natural state of the human being should be that way. In a healthy human being, that's the way you're wired. If you're not that way, we gotta help. We gotta seek help.
And there's a whole approach to therapy that emerged in the United States about 70 years ago called cognitive therapy.
Right.
And the great innovation in Torah language, we would say the great chiddush, the great innovation of cognitive therapy, and I approve of cognitive therapy, was to take that basic idea that your thoughts dominate your feelings and to do some of the engineering to bring it down to day-to-day practice so people know how to apply that principle.
Right.
Okay.
This is Tanya 101.
Yes.
You know that, Tanya 101. Okay. We have another, we're going to tie up soon. So I have another question. Let's ask our assistant. Any other questions came in? Nothing came in there. Something came in by me. If there are in a household, okay?
Yes.
There are big children who are off in college. They're back home. And they don't accept the house rules. And there's some children at home who do accept the house rules because they live at home. And the other ones come back home and they disrupt the younger children's routine. Speaking to them just creates more havoc and just more stress and issues. Any quick tips you would give to the parents, the adult children, other than all zooming in with the therapist for a few sessions?
So I want to tell you a story. I was about 7 years old. Let's say it's 1949. My father was helping Holocaust survivors. A man came to our house. He had with him a young boy about my age who had been born probably in the middle of the war in 1942.
Wow.
Okay, I was born in 42.
Wow.
So this boy somehow survived. He came to my house, and while my father was working, advising the father of this boy, told me to play with the boy. The boy was playing with my toys, and he was very rough. And I saw he's breaking some of my toys. And I didn't want to let him play with my toys. And I went to my father, and I told my father what was going on. And my father said, "Don't worry about it. Any toy he breaks, I will buy you 2 of." In crisis situations, you need to let go of a certain control. Now, I didn't have to let the kid set my house on fire. If there was a crisis, Holocaust, it's the end of the war, and you have teenage relatives who survived the war The family has brought them to America. There's no way to put them. They're sleeping in your living room. And these people don't observe a lot of the rules and ground rules that you normally follow. But it's a crisis situation. In Hebrew, sha'at cherum. So you got to cut them some slack. The magnifying glass is saying, you've had a problem all along with your kids who are at a certain age. They become teenagers. It's a terrible age to be. Okay? And they're fighting against the system, and they're fighting against you and the stupid rules. And normally you're in a position where you try to ignore it, or you send them to Israel, you do something to get rid of them, let somebody else deal with them. But we have a crisis situation. You can't throw them out of the house. Okay? They need a safe haven in your house. So you accept that as a temporary measure. And you may need to say to younger kids, look, your brother Yossi is not doing what he should do. But we are in a crisis situation. Everyone is tense now. We need to be kind to Yossi. What Yossi is doing is wrong. And in normal times, I wouldn't let him do that in our house. But I love Yossi, and I need to protect Yossi. So the rules change during a crisis.
Got it. Very, very well said. Very well said. Wow. Lots to unpack and lots to unload. Positivity. Happiness was first. Gratitude of attitude. The positivity of 5 minutes in the morning. Happiness means you find a medium that you enjoy to release some tension and bring out something within you to bring you to a happy mood. That's number one.
Simcha.
Simcha. The S.
Vitamin
S.
S.
What do you call it? What do you call it?
Vitamin S.
Vitamin S. Vitamin Simcha. For those who don't follow the Hebrew, Simcha means joy, happiness, gladness.
During your life, a lot of the times you can float. You just float. Okay, no big highs, no big lows. At a crisis time, you can't just float, because you won't float. Chas v'sholom, you'll sink. You need to stimulate your own immune system by looking for those things that bring you joy. And if you don't know how to find those, and the magnifying glass has exposed that, maybe you need to talk to a wise advisor, a good friend, a rabbi, maybe even a psychologist. But you need to find that stuff that really brings you joy, and don't give yourself excuses for not doing it. It takes too much time. It's not, I devote my life in your circles to Torah. This is a waste of Torah time. In our language, bittul Torah. Okay? Now, if when you study Torah, wow, you're ecstatic. You get to read a discourse of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, and you're in seventh heaven, fine.
That's your outlet. That's your thing.
That's your outlet.
Actually, I was speaking with a colleague today, a Chabad rabbi. We're talking about what we should be doing now in the community, and there's debate out there. There's a Chabad rabbi who is giving out masks. It's a great thing to do. But is that the mission? Put masks in, I think it was in Bayonne or Jersey City, 60,000 masks. Somebody donated. They're giving out masks to everybody. Very fun. We're having this intellectual, debate. Is that our job or not? He said, look, I haven't been to the Chabad. I go in just to get the mail. I'm home, take care of my kids, and I'm studying Torah like I haven't in years. He said the amount of pay, that's his. And I know he's someone that really enjoys learning and studying really deeply. He's loving it. So I guess it's a healthy thing. It's a thing to study Torah anytime.
People are saying, if you listen to the media, only certain media do I listen to, they're saying people are trying to predict what post-COVID is going to look like. They're saying there is no question that it will change our society. One of the things that they're saying is people are going to stop building skyscrapers in Manhattan because all kinds of people have found they don't need to drive into some office building.
We can work from home.
They've discovered that they can work from home, and it's going to change the workplace forever. For your friend who found, I can't believe that I deprived myself of the time to study Torah.
Right?
So maybe I can't do it 4 hours a day, but I'm carving out at least 1 hour a day. I like giving to my congregants at Chabad and taking care of them and officiating at bar mitzvahs and whatever, but I need an hour a day of straight Torah study.
Right. So that's the simcha.
And my client is going to keep playing clarinet.
Right? He's going to play clarinet. Maybe he'll become a professional. We spoke about the 5 minutes, which is a great, amazing tip. The 5 minutes of thinking positivity in the morning, thinking all the things that I'm thankful for, all the things that I have. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. Get your positivity going, which will help you be thankful. That leads to gratitude of attitude. If I'm thankful, I can now deal with the other things, see how much I do have, see how much I am thankful for and blessed with. I'm thinking of a lot of family members and just human beings in New York City in apartments and 6-story high rises. You ride the elevator with 10 people. You're cooped into an apartment. I mean, with thank God, 2,800 square feet, a backyard. So it's not a 3/4 of an acre. It's only a 1/4 of an acre. Our property, you know. But yes, I relate very well. I'm sure many of our viewers relate as well. Another
and also,
point,
we said, be aware. It is wired into us, just like we have bacteria in our body. It is wired into us to get sucked into negativity. Okay, and the same way without the virus, there are things you do. Usually, I assume most people after they go to the toilet, they wash their hands. Okay, we know that bacteria exist. There's mental bacteria. And when you find yourself getting drawn into negativity, you need to combat it. Sometimes you can do that on your own, and sometimes you need to talk with a trusted friend. I'm thinking about this negative thing. What do I need to do to get rid of it?
Right. Pirkei Avot tells us something by a friend or by a therapist, one of the two.
Right.
That works as well. Dr. Susskind is available for marital therapy, personal therapy. His office is here in Rockland County. He does teletherapy.
Yep.
Oh, that's the word. Okay.
Yeah, that's all that I'm doing now. I don't let anybody into my house now.
Right. I would hope not. So that's wonderful.
And I'll tell you again, how do things change? I'm finding that it's very effective. I like having a client in my office, live. There are certain vibes I feel I pick up on. I think I'm getting out of teletherapy, I'm getting 90% of what I get in the office, and the person doesn't have to spend an hour driving to my office from Manhattan or Brooklyn.
Right. And how about, but you're doing video therapy,
right?
Not phone.
If
minimal,
without a choice, I would use phone. If someone does not have access,
right?
But in this day and age, most people, if you're living in a Hasidic community where they ban computers in their community, there are such places. Okay, may have to use a phone. But you and I are talking to each other right now.
We're having a great conversation. I wouldn't mind going for another hour, but our time is going to be up.
Okay, look, you tell me. I serve at the rabbi's pleasure.
I've found that online, it's like a therapy session. 45 minutes is it,
Okay.
Longer than 45. It's 50. We're at 55 minutes now, which is I intended 10 minutes ago to end, but I always enjoy hearing from you and conversing with you. One more thing you mentioned is mind over matter, mind over emotion, and using your mind, knowing that you have the intellectual capacity to control and decide how you feel.
Correct.
It may be difficult.
To focus. Now, look, there are times when you need to get into what we would call, let's say, not negative, but painful feelings. Okay?
Right.
My teacher, my major teacher in graduate school, died yesterday. Okay? We're going to have a virtual Shiva call Thursday night.
I'm sorry.
Okay? Wonderful person. I should think about him and let myself cry and mourn. There are times when it's appropriate to deal with sad feelings. It's when the feelings are going on and on and on, they're useless, it's not clear where they're coming from, like someone tossing and turning at night and just feeling negativity, that we need to get away from that stuff. It's being hyper vigilant, being vigilant where it's not worth the price.
Right.
You know, if you hired security guards around your house, but it meant you didn't have much left to feed your family.
There's that balance. There's that balance. Right? There's that balance. Well, thank you so very much. It's great to have you. It's great to have you on. It's a great opportunity. I haven't seen you in a while, so this will get to see you too.
I am not, from this session, I am not ausgesund at all.
You're not ausgesund. That's a new one. Ausgesund. I am ausgesund. Yeah, okay. It's growing on me. You know, the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when he met people on Sunday mornings later in his life, when he no longer had the time, there were thousands of people who wanted to see him, and so there were brief encounters, and he would give a blessing, and people would ask a quick question, quick answer, and then he would hand you $1 to give to tzedakah. And he explained his custom that when two Jews meet, a third person should benefit. And so I hope that our viewers, the two of us met, everyone else didn't. We didn't meet them; they're meeting us. But I'm sure that many of our viewers, I know for certain, will benefit and will benefit from this conversation. And thank you so much for all of your tips. And all of our viewers, you can search up Dr. Ed Yisroel Susskind in Monsey. I'm sure his info is on the internet. If not, you can reach out to me, and I can give you his email address as preferred.
Email, phone number, either
email,
way.
phone number.
They're both readily available.
Both okay.
I would hope that people will send both you and me comments about what was helpful. I hope, sometimes when you give people advice, they say, that's nice, sweet talk, but it's all saccharine, Mary Poppins, Dr. Susskind. I'm angry at you because you don't really realize how hard things are, and you're giving me these lollipop answers.
Right. The
If someone feels that way and they want to follow up with a question, or if someone wants to just tell me how wonderful Rabbi Aaron is, I would be happy here. I want to tell you one other thing around Simcha. If you go to YouTube and you type in Susskind kosher humor,
okay,
you'll see me doing stand-up. Might add Jewish kosher stand-up.
Jewish kosher stand-up. Okay, that's good for Simcha, for joy, for happiness. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Susskind. We look forward to seeing you soon in good health. And we'll give each other a big hug.
You got it.
Only the best, with the best of health for you and your family and all of our families, our loved ones, our communities, the entire world.
And
Amen.
Thank you for setting this up.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Okay.
Have a good night. And broadcast.